So about an hour ago, an hour and a half ago, I was went for a walk with my friend, and we went to this place called Givata Tanakh, Bible Hill. And it's right behind the Tachana, the first station in Jerusalem. And it's a hill that just overlooks the old city, and it's right behind the Scottish church. I've never been there. And there's steps going up from right behind the Tachana and some pathways. Beautiful panorama. Of course, now it's, end of summer, and there hasn't been any water, and everything is brown and dusty and even burnt in some places. But amazingly, and I've never noticed this before, but it's a season for some strange plant that grows straight up and has all these little tiny white flowers. Thin, long stem, about 1 meter high, and then little balls that open up into little flowers. Thin, just one stalk. And there are a lot of them there. And they're opening up, and they open up like sort of from the middle first. I don't know if anybody, maybe Jonathan Licht, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know what it's called. But my amazement was that, sorry?
Chatzav.
Yes. And my amazement was that there was nothing on this field that was growing. There'd been no water for forever. For at least, I don't know, since, more than half a year, for sure. And yet, these tall stems grew and are flowering just within the last month. Somehow, from what looks like the driest earth possible, they rise up. I don't know if it's from the dew or from whatever little bit of moisture they find underneath there.
Onion. They have onion.
There's a bulb. Yes, it's a bulb. Yeah, they're bulbs. And there's like a whole bunch of them together, and then so maybe it's coming from the bulb, all of that potential. But the bulb's been sitting there in the dry heat for so long. And I couldn't help but think this is really a wonderful image of our practice. That we're sitting like bulbs, like those bulbs. It's a bulb like an onion bulb on the ground, and this is touching what the Bendōwa is about. That you just keep sitting there. And it's not in your power to force anything to happen. If anything happens, it happens on its own sweet time. But it won't happen if you don't sit. And this is where Dōgen's getting to. It is like that onion that took 6 months to sprout. And only when it's so dry and nothing else can live, does it rise up and make flowers, which is really amazing. So this is sort of what I think is kind of like the Israeli lotus. In other countries, the lotus comes up from the mud and the very wet mud that you could never drink that water, it'd make you sick. It's full of insects and dirty. And yet this pure flower comes up. And if you want to see some lotus flowers, you should go to the botanical gardens. In the entrance, there's a whole lotus pond with hundreds and hundreds of them. Quite magnificent. But that's the Eastern image. And I think this plant is sort of our version of the lotus. It's like when you think nothing could grow, you really think nothing could grow, suddenly this tall stem with all these white, pure little flowers.
It is quite mythological, Chatzav, in Israel. The name,
Oh,
I
really?
think, yeah. As a child, when you grow up, you hear this name. I don't know what context, but it is, maybe other people in the group know, but Chatzav is there is, the name really rings a bell as something that is told about when you grow up. Chatzav in Israel, I think it's like, you know, cactus is also mythological in Israel, so it's as well.
Yeah, the sabra. But this plant, which is very delicate, and there's nothing we can get from it, like it's not a fruit or anything, you know, we don't benefit from it, right? Like the sabra people like because it, you know, it's got this fruit, but this flower, it just exists on its own. And the other thing you'll notice is that it has these, it exists in groups. You don't really see it standing by itself. There's usually like a sort of a Sangha of these flowers together. Sort of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or little groups here and there. But for our sitting, and as an example, as an allegory, in a sense, a metaphor for our practice, it's quite appropriate because this is sort of what Dōgen is getting at by so much of the Bendōwa being about internalizing the faith that you have awakened nature, that you have Buddha nature. And from that, you know, your zazen will then, you know, grow and develop. But first you need to have that, that deep trust. And so he's, you know, going over and saying your practice is an enlightened practice. You're not practicing to be enlightened. It's, you know, you practice because of the nature of enlightenment. It's an expression of enlightenment, you know. And that's that's sort of the faith that the bulb of this chatzatz has, knowing that, yeah, okay. What to say? That no matter how long it takes, it's going to flower. It's going to flower. And that's kind of how we need to sit. Is that zazen is that that sitting on the ground with that deep knowing that the sitting in itself is, you know, realizing your nature. And you're not having to become something you're not, but rather to fully realize what you are. And then when it seems very dry for a long time, you come back to that faith. And for most of us, our meditation is very dry, and it seems like we're in the desert for a long time. Or there may be a flash flood, and suddenly there's a lot of rain, and you get drenched, and you feel like it's maybe even too much. But then we come back to the dry spell and the drought. So the dryness and the lack of flower is more often than not the norm in meditation practice. But that's why we need to internalize and strengthen the trust we have and the faith in our own nature. And this is, you know, very central to Dōgen's teaching and to Zen as a whole. You know, it's that trust not in what you can become, but in what you already are, and to, you know, see past the illusion, the delusion that you're, you know, lacking and a broken person. So this is our last reading now for the Bendōwa on the endeavor of the way. Yeah, and it's that trust which will give you, motivation to continue. Because you may not see your flower today or tomorrow or even in a month or two. But you sit with that trust that's within you at all times. So I'm at the page 7, I believe. Page 7 at the top. And I wanted to go over a couple of the questions that Dōgen brings in, which were taken from his students, but he expresses them in his own way. Because we may find that even though this is sort of almost 800 years ago, the questions are similar to some that if we kind of phrase them in a slightly different way, they're similar to some of the questions we have. The issues of our practice don't change so much. Now, even in one of the sections here, the question is asked about, how in this degenerate time, can we practice in this really degenerate and fallen time? And we can ask the same thing with so many distractions and so much materialism, so much poverty, so many problems and distress and environmental crisis. How can we practice? And Dōgen was asking and was asked very similar questions. So we can feel a bit of when we read these questions and kind of have to translate them a bit into our own cultural nuance. We can feel a bit assured that people throughout history have been dealing with the same challenge of how to fully be a true human being at this time. And how to really realize the truth of this life. It's a universal issue throughout time and space. So let's read a couple of questions. And before he gets to the questions, the paragraph before, I'm just going to read a couple of lines of the two paragraphs before the end. I'm not sure if we read them or not, but I just want to repeat a couple of them for you because it's emphasizing before we get into the questions, he's going to repeat his main thrust of faith. And it's not faith in something outside of you. This is the Zen point here. It's faith in yourself. It's faith in yourself. And we of weak faith need this strengthening. This being so, this is the top of it. The zazen, the sitting meditation of even one person at one moment imperceptibly accords with all things and fully resonates through all time. Thus, in the past, future, and present of limitless universe, this zazen carries on the Buddha's transformation endlessly and timelessly. Each moment of zazen is equally the wholeness of practice, equally the wholeness of realization. This is really a quite thunderbolt of truth, whereas we're not hoping one day to finally have the deepest meditation we can have, but we all have these moments where everything drops away and you're fully here, whole, completely whole, and at peace with who and what you are and with the world you live in. Your meditation, your sense of being, and your consciousness accords, is in harmony with all things. And it's not a thought. It's not a thought. And to say it afterwards is to speak hollow and, what seems like shallow truths, you know, shadows of truth. It's nothing you can say, but it's that moment that rang true for you in your mind and body. And then the next moment, it's gone. But that one moment was completely true. And that's what keeps us going. You know, it doesn't have to be that suddenly your mind has changed for the rest of your life. Why am I not different after all these years of practice? Why am I still struggling with some of the same crap? Well, you know, I've got the same brain. I mean, this brain and these memories and all this personality and all this conditioning. But I've got this moment, and this moment is vast, My memory, my past and future is narrow. But this present moment, okay, is endless. And if we can appreciate those moments, those single moments, without the greed of hoping that that moment will continue. So the non-attachment is it accepts the moment as complete without wanting more. You know, when that moment passes, okay, your realization, your harmony has now returned to disharmony and want and like and dislike. Okay. You know, so be it. So I think instead of thinking about how our whole lives have changed, Dōgen is bringing our focus back to the single moment. And that's where we can find some support and strength. Stop expecting that your practice is going to revolutionize your life and your world. But it will perhaps open up one moment. And that single moment then is in complete harmony. So I'm at the question. Oh, by the way, he says also, this is so not only while sitting, okay? It permeates everywhere. So this is true not only while sitting. So another important aspect of the Zen teaching, and especially in Dōgen Zen, is when he's talking about Zazen, sitting is one posture of Zazen, but Zazen involves all activities, okay? Walking, standing, lying, brushing teeth, chopping vegetables, going to work, going to school, turning a page, shutting off your computer. All activities are Zazen, because that's the moment of truth. That's the only moment you have. And that moment permeates all things. Because you never lose your connection with the rest of the world. So whether it's opening your computer or whether it's, sweeping the floor or whether it's doing your laundry, that's the moment that connects with all other things. We think it must be some sublime, transcendent realization with our eyes closed. Well, that's not Dōgen Zen, He's saying it's all activities. Because every moment is equal. It's the only moment you have. So, if we can appreciate the vastness of each moment, we'll see that vastness is activated and equal, whether it is, folding clothes, or whether it is having a Dharma discussion, or whether it is the last moment before you fall asleep. Question number 1. I am page 7 now. And by the way, the questions here are invitations also for us to ask our own questions when we have questions. We have now heard that the merit of Zazen is lofty and great. Zazen is super. But an ignorant person may be doubtful and say, there are many gates for Buddha Dharma. Why do you recommend Zazen exclusively? Why is Zazen so important? And the answer is because this is the front gate of Buddha Dharma. That doesn't tell me so much, okay? So according to Dōgen, there are many ways that I can practice. Why is Zazen so important? Because it's the front gate. It's the front gate. It's going to open up. Now, the next question follows. Why do you regard Zazen alone as the front gate. This is why I wanted to get to these two questions. Because he doesn't accept just the answer Dōgen gives. Okay, it's the most direct place to have realization. And he says, well, why do you think it's the most direct way? And he says, the great master Shakyamuni authentically transmitted this splendid method of attaining the way, and all Buddha Tathagatas of the past, future, and present attain the way by practicing Zazen. For this reason, it has been transmitted as the front gate. Furthermore, all the ancestors in India and China attained the way by practicing Zazen. Thus, I now teach this front gate to human beings and devas. Okay. What is this? What is this answer telling us? This answer is telling us something that most of us today don't have a strong sense of. The sense of history and transmission and teacher, from teacher to teacher and teacher to student, and student becoming teacher and then passing it on throughout history from the Buddha onward. That sense of, ancestors and standing on the shoulders of those who came before us, that we're not reinventing the wheel, that we are, part of a tradition. And it doesn't mean you accept everything that was written and said and done in that tradition. But we have to have some type of trust that many enlightened people, or simply just very wise sages, have spent their lives trying to pass this on so that we can benefit from it. And this is what the first two questions are saying. How do you know that this is so useful and effective? The thing is, not me. Like Dōgen's saying, oh, because take my word for it, I've sat a long time. He's saying from the Buddha onward, this is the practice people have been doing, and they've, transmitted it onward. And it's something in our very irreverent times and rejection of authority and sense of like every person is, king. We sort of have lost that respect. And it's an important thing not to take it as blind authority and blind acceptance of authority, but the authority here is about enlightenment. It's about awakening. It's not telling us follow this because, I have some leadership qualities. No, it's saying that this leads to awakening. The Buddha said to check it out to the Kamalas. He said, check it out for yourself, whatever someone teaches you. And if you realize it, then accept it. And if you don't, don't. So the Buddha wasn't saying just accept it on his authority. And that's not what Dōgen is saying either. But he's saying that, this whole tradition and transmission was about awakening and enlightenment. It wasn't about, rulership and power. It was about awakening. And we're continuing that tradition now, that transmission. So we can kind of trust that it's reached us today because many people, countless people perhaps, have awakened through this practice. So we're going to skip a couple of the questions. All right. But there's one question here that I want to get to, number 3, which I enjoy because people ask me that sometimes. And here it is. Question 3. We understand that you have studied the path of the Buddha ancestors and authentically transmit the Tathagata's excellent art. This is beyond the reach of ordinary thought. Okay. However, reading sutras or chanting Buddha's name must be causes and conditions of enlightenment. How can Zazen, this is the real question, how can Zazen, just sitting uselessly doing nothing, be depended upon for attaining enlightenment? This is a question, and this is a response I've heard many times throughout my involvement with the Dharma. How can sitting quietly doing nothing, or as he said, uselessly doing nothing, It's like useless sitting quietly doing nothing. How can that lead to enlightenment? And that's a question sometimes in our sense of perhaps one of the hindrances called skeptical doubt. Skeptical doubt is one of the 5 hindrances. And sometimes you're sitting there and you're just thinking, what am I doing? You know, you're sitting quietly doing nothing. I'm like, not only is this going nowhere, but I can think of a lot of better things I could be doing with my time. In terms of developing, maybe I should be reading a Dharma book. At least then I'll be learning something and not just sitting here feeling annoyed and, you know, irritated by the flies or by my painful back or whatever, right? How is this contributing to my awakened mind? And this is the question that Dōgen was asked, and Dōgen asks in the 3rd question here. And that's the question to answer about the skepticism. It's like, you know, what is this? What is this? Right? And his answer is, if you think that the samadhi of all Buddhas, their unsurpassable great art, is just sitting uselessly doing nothing, you malign the great vehicle. Okay? If you think that that sitting doing zazen is just doing nothing, okay, then you really, you're not respecting the Dharma. You don't understand the Dharma. Okay, such a misunderstanding is like saying there's no water when you're in the middle of the ocean. Just now, all Buddhists sit serenely at ease in receptive samadhi. Is this not the actualization of vast merit? What a pity that your eye is not yet open, that your mind is still intoxicated. This is his answer. His answer, you know, it's not as soft and gentle as teachers would answer today, right? Because back then they kind of had a different relationship with teachers. You know, it wasn't all cuddly and saying, you know, you're asking a good question and let's think about it, and you know, I'm going to encourage you. He's saying like, what a shame that you just can't see it. You just can't see that sitting quietly in samadhi, in the zazen of our sitting meditation, is realizing the nature of your mind. It's never doing nothing. It's actually realizing everything. Right? If you're doing nothing, or you think it's useless, and uselessly doing nothing, it means you have something in mind. You have something in mind. You have a sort of a preference. Instead of resting and opening to the great perfection that you already are. When you're thinking of an object, when you have a specific task in mind, right? Whatever work or whatever idea you have, your mind is not resting and open. It's focused, but it has become narrow. In this practice of Zazen, what we want to do is to fully accept the greatness of mind that has no object, that is not defined by your good ideas or by your bad ideas, by your good thoughts or your bad thoughts. It's realizing that your awareness is beyond all of that. As he says in the next line, it's inconceivable. Your mind is not limited by a concept. It's inconceivable. So resting in that great realization, that great moment of ease, and that's why in another essay he writes, the Dharma gate, Zazen is the Dharma gate of great ease and joy, because it's letting go of having to become something, and it's such a relief not to have to be good or bad, not to have to be great or small, not to have to be even you. You know, whether it's a father, son, daughter, mother, sister, worker, whatever it is, to not have to be that for a moment, to let everything drop. There's a great ease there, and there's a joy of being, the joy of being. And this is what he's saying, is that it's never doing nothing. It's actually realizing, the truth of what it means to be alive here in this moment, to be truly human. So, again, whenever thought comes up that perhaps you want to share, don't hesitate. So what I want to go to then, since our time is limited, I'm going to skip some of these because he talks about different schools here and stuff. And it's all good to read. It's all good to read. But for us to read together, I want to go over to page 15. I'm skipping. I mean, his answer in that question is really great, and there's a lot to learn about. So I highly recommend reading that third question. It goes on for like a page and a half, his answer. So that's good to study and to read slowly on your own, because his words are very supportive. They're very supportive. So I'm at question 11 now. I've gone all the way ahead, and it's at the bottom of the page, 15. And it's asking a simple thing. Should those who are entirely engaged in Zazen strictly follow the precepts? Now, behind that question is the idea that when you're enlightened, and this has been the downfall of many people and many teachers especially, that when you're enlightened or when you have a deep realization, then you're beyond the rules. You're kind of transcended a bit. You're sort of beyond human standards, of behavior. And that's where this question is coming from. If you're really doing Zazen, you have deep realization, you need to keep the precepts, even just the 5 precepts of not killing, stealing, lying, not having intoxicants or harmful sexuality. So maybe I'm beyond those precepts. Never mind all the other precepts that ordained people keep. And of course, his answer being Dōgen, he says, holding to the precepts and engaging in pure actions is the rule of the Zen gate and the teaching of Buddha ancestors. Even those who have not yet received the precepts or have broken the precepts can still receive the benefit of Zazen. So if you break precepts, you don't have to be perfect. Okay? And precepts here is also talking about certain formal commitments you make to keep sort of more rules. But even if you are not living a morally perfect life, you can still meditate and benefit from Zazen. But he's emphasizing the fact that this is, right action, which is the precepts and part of the Eightfold Path, and meditation are not 2 separate things. Right action, the precepts, the rules of behavior of not harming others, and meditation, Zazen, are an integral and integrated practice. And that's kind of an important thing that we obviously, most of us understand intuitively, but just in case we think, okay, well, my meditation is so good, I can sort of go beyond. There's no beyond. There is no beyond here. Here's something else, another question that comes up. Question number 12. Is it all right for those who practice Zazen to also be engaged in chanting mantras or in the practice of shamatha, calming the mind, and vipassana, analytical introspection? Meaning, if you're doing Zazen meditation, just sitting shikantaza, can you be doing other things as well? Can you combine different practices? And it's also a question that all these years, 800 years later, I also get. People ask me, my main practice is say sitting meditation. Can I also do some chanting during it, or can I do some, yoga breathing or different things, or have a mantra from TM or different things like that. And what Dōgen says, I think is also accurate. Okay. When I was in China and asked masters about the essence of the teaching, I was told that none of the ancestors who authentically transmitted the Buddha seal in India and China in the past or present had ever engaged in such a combination of practices. Indeed, without devoting yourself to one thing, you cannot penetrate one wisdom. So he's not saying there necessarily that you can't do other practices, but don't think you can combine them into one practice. If you're doing Jewish prayer, for instance, do Jewish prayer. Don't do prayer, meditation, prayer zazen, right? If you're going to do zazen, do zazen. If you're going to do mantras, do mantras. But know what you're doing when, and not making a combination, because then you're not fully engaged in the integrity of that practice. So just as, countless Buddhas and ancestors have developed and used this practice to bring it to us, so too, say, for instance, with prayer, the tradition and the words and the texts and the intentions have been cultivated over centuries by masters to bring to us to use it well. So if that is a practice that, is effective for you, then we respect it by honoring the integrity of that practice and not by seeing how I can combine it into my own sort of style. That may seem very conservative to you, but actually I think it's just understanding that there are some wise people that knew what they were doing more than probably I do. And I'm going to honor that. And if it doesn't work for me, I won't use that practice, but I'm not going to try to change the practice very much. Of course, if some of you have done and your own journeys, I'd be interested to hear about that, how it works. But from what Dōgen says, it seems to make kind of sense to me. Question 13. And let's remember, Dōgen is talking to monks here. And it's, especially in medieval Japan, very conservative society. Okay, very conservative. All right. Should zazen be practiced by laymen and women, or should it be practiced solely, only by home leavers, meaning by monks? Answer. The ancestors say, in understanding Buddha Dharma, men and women, nobles and commoners are not distinguished. Okay? So that is quite a, that seems common sense to us, but Dōgen is very advanced, and enlightened people have a universal, a timeless view of wisdom. And so he sees very clearly that, from the view of the Buddha Dharma, men and women, rich and poor, educated, uneducated. And this is coming from also from the example of Huineng, the sixth ancestor, who I was thinking about reading with you guys. I said to Jonathan Hoffman in the beginning, Huineng, who became the ancestor and the sixth kind of leader of Zen, by being an illiterate farmer who snuck into a monastery and was pounding rice when he first had his first deep realization. And even at that time, he was ostracized and ridiculed because he was a dark-skinned, he was a southerner, and a poor lower caste individual. Yet his realization was recognized as equal to all the Buddhas. So what Dōgen is saying in this answer is something that can be helpful for us too. all men, women, lay or ordained, rich or poor, whatever your background, whatever your race, whatever your age. The Dharma is true for all people. Okay, here's another question that seems very contemporary and related to us. Right? And as we see, throughout time, we're dealing with the same questions. Question 14. Home leavers, meaning monks, are free from various involvements and do not have hindrances in zazen in pursuit of the way. How can the laity, lay people, us, who are variously occupied, family, work, school, practice single-mindedly and accord with the Buddha way, which is unconditioned? So that should be a question that resonates with each one of us. It's one thing for a monk or nun who is in a full-time environment that is devoted completely to realization in the Dharma. And even they struggle. Then how can I, as a lay person, realize this? How can I realize this and practice single-mindedly? What does Dōgen say? Home leavers, monks and nuns, are free from various involvements. Oh, sorry, I'm just reading the question. The answer: Buddha ancestors, out of their kindness, have opened the wide gate of compassion in order to let all sentient beings enter realization. Who among humans and heavenly beings cannot enter? If you look back to ancient times, the examples are many. So he says, out of the compassion, everybody can do this. Everyone can do this. Now that's encouraging. But one paragraph down, he tells us more specifically when he answers in the last 2 lines of that page 16. This just depends on whether you have the willingness or not. It does not matter whether you're a layperson or a home leaver. Those who can discern excellence invariably come to trust in this practice. Those who regard worldly affairs as a hindrance to Buddha Dharma think only that there is no Buddha Dharma in the secular world. They do not understand that there is no secular world in Buddha Dharma. Now that's an amazing statement, and I want us to pause on that for a moment. And that's pretty much the last statement I want us to look at, because time is short and this is such a good one. Okay. So this last thing that I want to look at with us, which is Dōgen trying to encourage lay people and giving the answer and giving this transmission of the teaching of the Bendōwa, the endeavor of the way, the wholehearted endeavor of the way. So he's trying to us, he's talking directly to us as lay people, how we can be wholeheartedly devoted to this practice of realizing our true natures, and this moment as complete, and fully realized. So he says, out of compassion, first of all, it's available. So number one, is there for us and has been given to us by all the teachers of the past this way. But number two, it really depends on your will. It doesn't depend on your past karma. It doesn't depend on how much fortune you had or how many teachers you had or how much good luck or whether you were born in this way or that. It is a matter of your willingness. Are you willing to work hard and to devote your life to realizing the truth of your own nature, to be more at ease and realized, one moment to the next? Are you willing, and you have the will to make every moment count? Not from a stressful, anxious place of saying, oh my God, I can't lose any time, I've got so much to do. But rather, because each moment is complete, each moment is the most precious thing in the universe for us. And if we can awaken to that truth, it's not an idea. That's the thing. The idea that we're deluded by, and the idea that we have become self-deceived, is that it has deceived us, and we self-deceive, is that some moments are better than others. And that some moments are more complete. And I can sit back and really enjoy a moment, have a great time. But then there are ones that I'm just trying to get through. And we kind of blame the circumstances. And here the reality that Dōgen is describing is completely other. Is the inverse of that. Of saying that there's no means to an end. This moment is an end in itself. Your life is not leading anywhere. Your life's not going anywhere. It's not. It can't. Every moment is it. It's complete. This is all you have. And truly, it's all you will ever have. You're not going to have another moment down the line. There is no down the line. This is it. This present is it. And it's now or never. It's everything or nothing. This is everything. And it sounds just like empty platitudes and poetic verses when we say it and we try to think about it. But the trust is to go deeply into that, the uselessness of the moment. It's not useful to lead to something else. It's leading to itself. This moment is leading to itself. And so he says it depends on whether you have the willingness or not. It doesn't depend on whether you're a monk or a lay person. And here's the last thing that we can take with us, that I want us to stay with for a bit, is this different relationship he has to the world. Whereas the ordinary view is that there's sacred and there's profane. There's holy and there's unholy. There's enlightenment, and then there's ordinary mind, unenlightened. There's awakening, and there's like being deluded. And as he says here, this relationship is different. And this is something we need to consider. Where he says, those who regard worldly affairs, all the stuff that you got through today, you know, that seemed just a drag, or you enjoyed a lot. Those who regard worldly affairs as a hindrance, an obstacle to Buddha Dharma, think only that there is no Buddha Dharma in the secular world. All right, that there's, you know, I mean, where's the Buddha Dharma in the mall, on the streets, in the halls of the academy, in the stock exchange, in the greed, in the prison, in the crime, in the police station, in the bulldozers, the secular world, you know, of environmental destruction, of viruses, of hospitals full of people, of children who are hungry. Where is the Buddha Dharma in the secular world? Well, that's the common view. The common view is, of course, this is not an awakened place. This is samsara, the suffering that goes around and around. They do not understand that there is no secular world in Buddha Dharma. That's an amazing statement. They don't understand that there's no secular world in Buddha Dharma. In the Buddha Dharma, from the point of view of the Dharma, everything is Buddha, is Dharma, and all things are Sangha. The triple gem describes reality. It's the world we live in. It's not, we define it very narrowly we define our path. And Dōgen's view is that this world is Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. There's no other world for us to practice with. This is it. And everything you face and everyone you meet is expressing Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. How do you practice that? It's a matter of your will. Don't divide. The great way is not difficult. Just don't pick and choose, says the third ancestor, Sing Sang. And we prefer the holy, the enlightened. We prefer the great ease and joy. But that's our preference. This world of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha also is the crying and the hunger and the destruction and the virus and the burning forests and all the difficulty. That's the unity of samsara and nirvana. That in our minds we split them. But according to Buddha Dharma, there's no secular world. There's no place that isn't Buddha Dharma. So this duality is something that causes us serious problems. That there's me, unenlightened, and then there's the person I hope to become through my zazen. Or there's a zazen that's like good and calm and peaceful, and there's zazen that I do most days, which is sort of like, But that's my not understanding that in the Buddha Dharma there's no secular world. In zazen, there's no unenlightened, or incomplete zazen. That each moment of zazen is a complete moment. Even if it includes all the disturbing thoughts and doubts and insecurities and restlessness and ill will and boredom. In the Buddha Dharma, there's no secular world. And it's the Buddha Dharma that we want to realize in our moment-to-moment lives. And as Dōgen says, in a reassuring but challenging way, if you have the willingness, that's where you will be. So, what I recommend is that if you're interested in going a little, reviewing a bit and going a bit deeper into these texts, then the Bendōwa is something that definitely should be slowly and returned to. And even just sections here and there that appeal to you. Not as a whole text, but just as, Dōgen says in a couple places at the beginning and the end. He wrote this to help us realize. He wrote this to help us. This is sort of a kind of gift, an act of kindness. A friend, a mentor, giving us some help on the way. So we should take this as sort of help on the way. Because most of us, I especially, need it. And that help on the way. And the Bendōwa is, trying to bring the heart back into the practice. The whole heart. We say being wholehearted. Being wholehearted means like you're including everything. And it's all life is included in your point of view. So before we finish with a couple of minutes of silence, does anyone want to say anything?
Yes, I would like to ask a question.
Please.
So I'm just wondering and thinking about the relationship between shamatha and zazen, or maybe even more specifically between a practice towards developing jhanas, different levels of concentrated absorption that are like so they're repeated. The Buddha repeats and mentions the jhanas so often, and to my understanding, shikantaza is somehow in many aspects different to the practice of working with an object or developing these levels of absorption. I understand it as a more open, objectless form of practice that deepens really one's insight into the nature of mind. And somehow these two types of practice, the jhana practice and the insight, or the shamatha and the vipassana, which I kind of understand vipassana more as of the same world of shikantaza. So I'm kind of wondering about the relationship between these two.
Yeah. So the jhanas have like 7 different levels, I think, 7 or 8, depends on how they're divided, of realization and mental sort of development. So that's true. And it's not necessarily, the other thing to remember with the jhanas is it's not necessarily it's often taught as a sort of level of progression, but not always. It's not always one leading to the next, because they kind of circle around, from what I've encountered with some teachings of that. How is it different, and is it compatible with zazen? In a sense, you could say it's even more compatible with, or there's more of a parallel to koan practice. Koan practice is kind of the Zen form of jhana practice, in the sense that you're deepening a realization and breaking through the certain limits of the mind. And koans lead to greater awakening, greater insight, and greater opening. So that's why you go through a whole series of koans. You don't just stay with one koan. You get through that one koan, and then you're on the next one. So in a sense, it's more compatible with, say, koan practice. Okay, if we're going to make a parallel. The other thing that's important with those two is that a teacher is really necessary. So the jhana practice, people can get lost in certain mental states, and it's very clear that those happen and they pass, that the jhanas are impermanent as well. And so too with the koan practice, the teacher is really necessary to fine-tune some of the understanding and the insights that you have. But in terms of it being similar, it's true, it's less similar to shikantaza and Soto Zen, which doesn't necessarily make it better or worse, or more effective or less effective. And Vipassana is also not so parallel to shikantaza. It's more a sense of a preliminary training for some of the jhanas, right? But and samadhi or shamatha is common to all forms of meditation. It's kind of like just stabilizing the mind. So you got to stabilize the mind first and the body before anything else. And that may take a long time, and you may have to do it again and again. But it's always there. So these practices are not identical. That's true, what you say. Is one preferable over another? That has to do with your own personal karma and sort of what you're inclined towards and what teacher you can find. So those are sort of the different aspects and different considerations. You know, so yeah, it's taught, but in the West, at least, the jhanas have not been developed as a teaching method. You know, almost nobody teaches with them. But most Theravada Western teachers use, you know, Vipassana as a main technique. I'm not talking about Goenka Vipassana. I'm talking about like Vipassana as the Buddha teaches it. So that's why I think, you know, what we read about when Dōgen said, oh, you know, the ancient masters, they didn't combine their practices. You know, I think that if you're gonna do jhana practice, you do jhana practice. And if you're gonna do shikantaza, you do shikantaza. And if you're gonna do koan, you do koan. The question is if you can find the right teacher for that, and whether you have an inclination and you're drawn to that from your own kind of your own karma. And I mean, the end result, like, is awakening. It's true, but how do you get there? Then it's definitely a different training.
Mm-hmm. And still, the Buddha, kind of, from what I understand, maps out this whole range of practices, this whole range of like skillful means, different tools that work together. So isn't that somehow different to what Dōgen is describing and what you were saying?
I mean, maybe, but when you read some of the teachings, like for instance, the different mindfulness sutras, 4 foundations of mindfulness, and the even just the mindfulness of breath. And when the Buddha says, like, if you do this for like 7 days really well, you'll be enlightened. You know, even just the mindfulness of breath. So I think it has to do with some of these states of mind may be implicit. You know what I mean? They may be sort of awakened and developed without it being so analytically, consciously, you know, distinguishable. So in a sort of a scientific way, the Buddha distinguishes them. Now, remember, he taught different things to different people, and it was all for the sake of being, you know, finding some awakening. Is the practice of jhanas, is that for all people? I don't know. I think the question is, what is really going to be of most benefit to your practice, to your specific practice? And, you know, whether those, whether when somebody is in a deep state of zazen, are they experiencing some of the jhanas? You know, is their mind developed in a certain way? I would be surprised if not, because I think the reason it's being taught, and the Buddha talks about it, is because he's sort of externalizing and expressing what happens in the mind when you go very deep and very open and very clear in that clarity. Now, the thing with Zen is that they simply don't talk about it much because they find it to be inconceivable and inexpressible. the Buddha did talk about it, and he expressed it more, although he doesn't talk about mindfulness a lot. And to get a real good definition of mindfulness, you're not going to find it in the sutras. You'll find what to be mindful of, but not what mindfulness actually is. You know, so that you're not going to find. And then it takes a lot of commentators afterwards, and even modern ones, to try to help us understand, well, what is that state of mind that's observing? Yeah. So I also think we could say something similar, that it's, you know, if these traditions are developing something really deep, and Zazen has, you know, continued throughout the centuries, then it's probably on the basis of it being a, you know, opening up states of mind that would not exclude jhanas. Would they be called that by some of these teachers? This is where the Zen masters become quiet, right? And that's something that some people find frustrating in Zen, and others find, kind of comforting, is that when you start expressing it and analyzing it, it sometimes seems to make it more distant. So I don't think that Dōgen is necessarily saying these things won't happen, but you have to trust that things happen even when you don't know they're happening or what's happening. So the emphasis here is on a different type of trust. I don't think he's excluding jhanas from happening. It's just saying it's, you know, as soon as you start knowing it and perhaps even articulating it, you're talking more about your ideas now and not about your realization.
Thank you.
I think one thing that that does make a departure, in a sense, from the sort of template that the Buddha set out with the jhanas and was taught later by, you know, later teachers, was that from Dōgen Zen and this type of a momentary realization and the Buddha Dharma being fully realized now, is that the jhanas are fully realized in your mind already. And your goal, your sort of practice, is to realize that they're realized. So it's not so much saying they're not jhanas or it doesn't follow that, but that they're fully realized as we speak. How can you realize your realization? So whether you call it jhanas or whether you call it, you know, satori or kensho or whatever the terms we have that, you know, have sort of different emphases. I mean, from what I get from Dogen's writing, it's not that that's not how awakening works or how it's expressed or how it's realized. It includes that and everything else. But it's sort of, it's not a step ladder. The step ladder is for our own awakening, not for our own realization. or I could put it the other way, that our awakening is fully, is fulfilled. Our realization of that awakening needs to develop. So it's kind of an odd thing to say that all the jhanas are fully realized right now in your mind. But how do you realize that? And that's the long and dedicated practice. So I think we should finish with a minute to sit together and finish our evening, our reading of Dōgen, and it's really quite wonderful. Okay. And as he says in the last line, I've written this to leave for people of excellence who aspire to practice Buddha Dharma, and for true students who wander like water weeds, seeking the way. So my wish and my wish for us, for all of us, as we enter this year, and in the Jewish cycle, we're really starting another year now in a few days. That we can accept that we're people of excellence, and that we allow ourselves to wander a little beyond our comfort zone, to wander seeking the Buddha Dharma in our lives and in the world around us. And you may have to wander a little farther from home. Even if you don't leave home, you may have to wander farther than you're used to in order to realize the Buddha Dharma in your life. So may we support each other in that. Now we're going to finish with one 1/2 minute silence and stillness and peace.